Good morning, y'all. Hope you're doing well today. So in today's message, we're going to be talking about what it means to be authentic and how that equates to freedom. And so I hope you enjoy the message today. So, a lot of times when I'm referencing toxicity or people who seem or are toxic in our life, it's like, what am I talking about? What does that mean? Because I think it can mean different things to different people, right? At its core, here's what I mean. Toxicity at its core means or translates to someone who impacts you in a bad way. Okay, so just someone who affects you. And, this really should prompt us to look at ourselves first as the potential problem, because projection is a real thing, right? It's been identified in the psychology community as verifiable, you might say, right? And so it's not a bad thing to pause and check ourselves anytime we have this tendency to internally view someone else as toxic, right? In fact, if you never check yourself, then that's certainly a sign of not having any humility at all, right? So it's good. It's good to be humble. It's good to self-evaluate. But there's a balance here, and there's a healthy way and a non-healthy way to do this. And we're going to talk about that today. So yes, anytime we feel like someone is toxic, it should prompt us to look at ourselves first, because that is an indication that you are capable of learning and growing, right? Now, if you've done that in this particular situation or with this particular person, if you've looked at yourself and you've looked at everything in every different kind of angle, and you tried to not use bias, you tried to step outside the situation and view it, without that bias, then you can safely draw the conclusion that it's not you, that it's not your fault, that you're not contributing to it, right? Or at least not in a major way. So, in my experience, someone who is toxic typically is someone who lies and or uses people, okay? And it can even be someone who just messes with people, to get joy out of it, kind of like a bully, okay? And it can also be someone who's just really inconsiderate and just never changes and never improves. They're just extremely selfish and inconsiderate of people. What's interesting is when you look up the word toxic on the online etymology dictionary, it references poison and waste, like poisonous waste. And so that's really interesting. The reason I try to elaborate on toxic character traits on my channel is to help you identify people in your life that may be bringing you down or even blocking your blessings from coming to fruition, okay? Because when I say there are certain people that are toxic in our lives, and that they have an impact on us, that's what I mean. That's what the impact is. They are essentially not only bringing our good vibes down to, bad vibes and affecting us energetically. Not only that, but they're literally like in the way. They're keeping us focused on the wrong things. And so that's important. It's almost like you might view God's plans for our life, because the Bible talks about that. You might view this potential like paradise or Eden that's meant for us to enjoy and experience within our time here on earth. But it's like again, I'm a visual person, right? It's like if you're stuck in drama with certain people in your life and it just never gets better, and you've you know, self-evaluated and you're like, I really don't feel like I'm contributing to this, and I don't know why, you know, this has to be this way, and your mind is just tied up in that manner. When that happens, essentially it's like it's preventing you from having the eyes to see this other reality that would be so much better that you could equate it to like paradise on earth. You know what I mean? A peaceful existence where you can actually experience joy, and you know, you're not just stressed out every day and things like that. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like when you're tied up and busy with this drama, you can't even perceive that, right? You don't have the eyes to see it. And so, in other words, and you can even experience this. Let me just elaborate here for a minute, because I'm thinking back on my own experience. You know, if you're stuck in a bad, toxic environment for a long time, you can go there in your mind creatively and you know, kind of dream up this idea of what a more peaceful life would be like. You know, but it's like you don't know how to get there. It's like you're missing that map to get you there, you see. And so, and the reason you can't, it's kind of like it's there. The map exists, but you can't see it. And when I say see it, I mean you can't realize it. You can't perceive it because of all this muddy mess that you're stuck in. That's why I just try so hard to come at every angle to try and get us to be able to recognize these blockages in our life. That's really what it's all about. It's not about judging other people. It's not about judgment. It's about just, you know, educating ourselves to the point that we can identify it. You see what I'm saying? I want to get you there. I want to get you to that more peaceful, joyful life. That's what I want for you and for me and for all of us that have goodness in our hearts. All of us that are honest and true people. Okay? So the key word here is to perceive, the ability to perceive the path to get us to that place. But before we go into that, I want to pause here, and I just want to say this. The last thing I want is for you to be self-examining, which again is not a bad thing. But I don't want you to be listening to my messages and self-examining based on like particular details I'm sharing and wind up self-convicting. Because, you know, we can, any of us can pick ourselves apart. You know what I mean? Just know that when I'm trying to identify these toxic character traits and I'm sharing them with you, if you're watching my channel, I can guarantee you they're not meant for you. You know, like to self-condemn or self-convict. It's meant for you to be helpful for you to be able to perceive this toxicity in your life so that you can get untangled from it. Okay, that's what it's for. Because, you know, while it is good to self-evaluate, it's not good to self-condemn, and walking on eggshells is certainly no way to live, right? You know, I want to remind you all here too, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I've mentioned a couple of times there's this book I have, this older book called Becoming a Writer. I think the author's name is Dorothea Brand, and I love it because it's kind of like it's literally meant to help you become a writer, but when you read it through the lens of psychology, it applies there too. It's the coolest. And so the main takeaway I got from that book is she says don't edit while you're writing, okay? But you can apply that to your life. And so the way this applies to our life, to not edit while writing, translates over into censorship of yourself, oneself, okay? Because if you're censoring your every step, you're blocking the creation process in your life. Okay, so you're like blocking that path, that creative path that's meant to get you to this better place. So when we're talking about censorship of oneself, let's think about this for a minute. The key here is this, okay? If you, A, aren't a liar, you're B, you don't take advantage of people, which is an intentional act from those who do take advantage of people because they know what they're doing, all right? And if C, you don't get joy out of bullying people for fun, just poking at them and messing with them, then you don't have to censor yourself. If you live by a code of ethics, then like truly in your heart, and you're an honest person, then yeah, we all have this unconscious part of our psyche, and we're all going to have behaviors come out, you know, from us, emanate from us, from this unconscious part. But see, this is where the whole Bible verse, a tree is known by the fruit it bears, this is where this comes to life and is very applicable. It's because of those unconsciously driven behaviors. See, you don't have to censor yourself, because if you have goodness in your heart, you don't even have to worry about the things that come from your unconscious. Okay, there's a key distinction here between you and someone who has things to hide, someone who doesn't have goodness in their heart. You see what I mean? So someone who does do those things that I just listed, someone who is a liar, someone who does take advantage of people, someone who does get joy out of messing with people, especially people who are just living a lie completely, they do censor themselves, and they have to, right? And they do it, they censor themselves, and I know this from, you know, observing very closely in my life. Excuse me, people I've known in my life, okay? They censor themselves so heavily that it's almost like they don't have a personality at all, which is why a lot of times people like this are described as robotic. And really what it means is they're just having to censor themselves so much to be careful that nothing slips out, see, so that they don't expose themselves, all right? And what's interesting is if you could observe these people who seem to have no personality, okay? If you could observe them without them knowing, you might be surprised. You might see, oh my gosh, when I'm not around or they're with a particular person or people, they're totally different. They're a totally different person. In fact, they actually have some personality to them because they're not censoring themselves around this person or this group, because they're being their authentic selves over here, but with you, they have things to hide, see? So it's really interesting. Now, on another note, this is really important too, really important. I have personally witnessed beautiful, bright, shining lights go absolutely dim from conforming to ridiculous expectations, okay? So there are people who, I don't know, it's like they try to be self-righteous or something, and they try to apply some kind of totally unrealistic standards to themselves, that they think that by being a certain way they can, you know, be righteous in that manner or something, and then they can actually expect the same things from their children and grandchildren and things like that. And it's sad, because then, you know, those kids are not even free to be themselves and be happy and joyful. They basically are conditioned to start censoring themselves at an early age, and they become very rigid and boxed in. Essentially, you know, these people are putting them in this mental prison, right? That's not what life is all about right there. So, you know, in that book I was talking about, the point the author was making was that stopping to self-correct can stunt or halt the creation process. And when you're writing a book, like, you know, which was the point of her book, getting you to write, be a writer, becoming a writer is the name of it. The point of it is that, you know, you've got this flow, again, this numinous flow that's coming out of you, and you're just supposed to do it, you know, just like that Nike's, slogan, just do it. Just live your life, right? And so when you're trying to be so careful, and you're editing along the way, it's going to interfere and halt that creation process. So you can live free. You can live free. We have to acknowledge that we're not perfect. But you want to be able to enjoy just being yourself openly, because first of all, for yourself, it's just freeing. It's freeing for your spirit, because that creative spirit is flowing within you now. Excuse me, y'all. I'm getting better though. It's like that's what I mean when I say it's like an energetic freedom. You know what I mean? But then the way others can perceive you is that they see you having like flavor. You know what I mean? They see, your authenticity, your personality, and it's beautiful. And so, you risk, if you try to conform in some way to some type of expectations or standards, then it's kind of like you're becoming bland in that way. And, yeah, that might make you more acceptable to some people. Do you really want to live your life that way? You know what I mean? Do you really want to have to live within this energetic prison? Just what I've decided, I'm not going to tell you what to do, obviously, but what I've decided, in my opinion, that's just no way to live. And I would rather be with my own people who don't live by the belief that you can somehow achieve perfection or self-righteousness by being a certain way. Now, again, if you truly have integrity in your heart and this code of ethics, you might say, then you're just going to, all your actions are going to be aligned with that. You don't have to censor yourself. You see what I'm saying? So it's because you have nothing to hide, in other words. See, when you're not a liar, you have nothing to hide. So, again, we aren't without flaws, but genuine people will love your flavor, and they're just going to love you anyway, Genuine people won't expect you to be without flaws, because they are humble enough to admit their own. You see what I'm saying? It's only arrogant people, usually with things to hide, that expect you to match their toxic and fake energy to prop up their false reality. And I know this firsthand. I'm not just saying stuff that just, sounds a certain way. I'm telling you firsthand, excuse me, from people I've known, okay? There are people who are a certain way within their family, and then to the outside world, outside of those four walls, they're different. And that's why they have such strict expectations, not only on themselves and their own self-censorship, because they have things to hide, right? But they also project these expectations onto their family, because they're so terrified of, if you're being genuine, then the way they are, and that you've seen and witnessed and experienced firsthand, the way they are, you might let that slip out. See, so they have to keep you under control too, to make sure you don't get out of hand and start just telling the truth. You see what I'm saying? So I just want to encourage you never ever sacrifice your light to prop up another's false reality. Okay? And it is false, because perfection as a human being is a lie from the devil, straight from the devil himself. Okay? The father of lies. If you're an honest, genuine person, you don't have to live in fear. You don't have to. Because you have nothing to hide. And if you're, that's why I say, if you're entangled with someone who does have something to hide, you're not going to be free either. They're not free, but you're not going to be free either. So you got to get disentangled. So now I want to take a moment, and I want us to explore where we should check ourselves. Okay, let's explore that. So there's no need to censor, okay? But we can edit. We can edit. There's a difference. Excuse me. Just like in the book. So when you're censoring, it's happening along the way. That's not good. That's going to interfere with that creation process. But when you're editing, that's in hindsight. That's when you sit down at the end of the day and you say, man, this or that happened just really didn't go well. You know, what was my part? What did I contribute to that? What could I have done better? You know, and that's where you're going back, you're learning from it, and you're growing, and you're editing, because in the future you'll respond differently. Maybe you'll respond instead of reacting, or whatever it is. You'll have had time to have put thought into it and evaluate, and then, you know, that's how you change your life. That's how you learn and grow. So there's a difference, again, between censoring and editing. So see, isn't it just so helpful, like with that book, for example, to have this information available from those who have been there, those who have already made this journey, and it's like they've, like they're the, I think it's called cartographers, right? The people that are actually the map makers. They can show us the way. They can be the lights on our path because they've been there. And it's, you know, I used to think in either or terms, you know, kind of like black and white thinking. Maybe we all have been like that, you know, before we've really learned a lot and grown a lot. But, you know, I used to think that that it was even possible to just learn completely from others and then never suffer from making, you know, a lot of big mistakes myself. I knew we all would make mistakes, but I didn't think, you know, I thought if you can just really read enough and learn from other people enough, you wouldn't make big mistakes. But now that I've lived my life a little longer, I believe it's a blend. I think that we learn and grow from a mixture of our own mistakes as well as learning from others. But learning from others is possible, and it's a beautiful thing when we have access to their stories and their maps, you know, that they have corrected, you know, and so it's just it's a journey that we don't have to take alone, you know. Being alone sometimes to process is important, but ultimately when you zoom out, you don't have to take it alone, you know. And you really are never alone. That's what I've come to understand too. So in editing ourselves, that's how we learn and grow. And you know, to me, in my opinion, we are refining what we're doing when we're learning and growing is we're refining our perception. So I looked up the term perceive in the online etymology dictionary, which means to grasp. And there's a lot more elaboration here, but at the end of that entry in the dictionary, it sums it up by saying to grasp. And, you know, I just want to remind you too that truth is truth at all levels. So let's be inspired by this definition, okay, to grasp. So I want to share a visual with you all, a metaphor, right, about grasping. So if we are, here's my duckies, my Jeep duckies. If we are grasping too much, right, we're holding on, then our hands are useless for anything else. Okay, just go with me for a minute. So we're occupied. They're taken up, right? The capacity is filled. When you're grasping, you're holding on to something. You can also view this as it's keeping you stuck. You're busy. See? So that's what I mean when I say toxicity can keep us from you know, our intended blessings from above. That's what I mean. And here, let me expand even further, okay? We can't even see or realize our own personal Eden or paradise or intended blessings when we are distracted or busy, okay? Because we are focused on the wrong things. So we're taking a physical example here that I shared with you all and translating that over to a mental thing, right? With regards to just how we're perceiving this truth. Again, truth is truth at all levels. So you see what I'm saying? This is how toxicity is toxic, especially in our life, when it's a part of our life. And this is why I try to expose toxicity from every angle. It's to keep us energetically free so that we can focus on the right things, okay? I often say that Jesus was a rebel because he was a nonconformist, okay? And that's because he was dangerous to the status quo. Because people actually believed that they could just be a certain way or do certain things to obtain some form of perfection through customs or rituals, okay? I want to share with you Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And I love to read the different translations here, the different versions, So the King James, is the kind that uses the verbiage like be ye transformed. But in reading the whole verse, I want to share with you the New International Version, okay? It says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed," or "be ye transformed, by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." See? So y'all, we are never lost when we are focused on renewing our mind, okay? Now I want to share with you the meaning of the word edit and the history of the word edit. This is so interesting. Again, from the Online Etymology Dictionary, okay? So watch the meaning change throughout time here. So in 1791, this is considered the early modern period. It's really special whenever you look up a term in this dictionary from, the 1300s and even, further back into the Dark Ages or Middle Ages. But that's kind of rare, I found. But a lot of times the earliest meanings are published from the early modern period here. So this is from 1791. The meaning of edit was to publish. It was synonymous with just doing it. Publish. Isn't that incredible? And then in 1793, watch it change. All right? In 1793, the meaning was to supervise for publication. Here we see the introduction of censorship. It's being now, instead of just published and put out there, see, now it's being censored. It's being supervised. Now, we're going to end this on an inspirational note, because by 1885, it took a little while, which is typical in our life, right? For us to put things together and be like, okay, now I get it. But by 1885, check it out. The definition had changed again. It doesn't, if you just skim over this stuff, it doesn't seem to change. This is why you have to really pause and focus, okay? So, by 1885, the meaning was make revisions to a manuscript, okay? So the meaning of revise is to look at again. You have revise, or from Latin, I think the Latin roots was which means again, and then you have videre or videre, okay, which means to see again, okay? And then it expands with intent to improve or amend. And that's what we want to get to. That's where we want to end with our own personal approach to this life and our self-evaluation. We don't want to be censoring ourselves as we're living. We just want to live our lives and have that freedom. We don't want to be imprisoned in our mind by censorship as we go along. We have to accept we're going to make mistakes. You know, we're not perfect. We're perfectly imperfect. But taking the time afterwards, you know, preferably frequently, so that we don't have to, you know, suffer a lot, hopefully, but just taking the time to self-evaluate. That's what that means, right? To make revisions, so to look at again, to revise, and then we can learn and grow from there. So I hope that this has been entertaining, inspiring, encouraging. I hope that you got something out of it, and I hope that it got the wheels turning for you. So thank you so much for coming along to hear the message. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.
Bye.